So I think, unfortunately, we've got to be a bit proactive here, and it's nice to think that it would all come to us, but I think we've got to go out and almost build these networks and find support where it's not otherwise forthcoming.
Welcome to The Full Stop, and our monthly podcast presented by Sarah Lawrence, Michael Hughes and me, Berenice Smith. Our podcast is for you if you're a childless not by choice, as we help you to craft your own story. We welcome all, including those who are child-free or parents, so that you can learn about the challenges that face those who are not parents, not by choice, and how best to support them. We can learn from each other. In this episode, we're joined by Patricia Faulks, who set up her blog, Lily and Me, during COVID lockdowns, to share the story of ageing alone with childlessness and the challenges that brings, including how to learn a computer and how to get into Zoom calls. Denise Jackson returns to the Full Stop guest seat to talk about bias around caring and solo households. Recently, she took to Twitter to challenge UK money-saving expert Martin Lewis, so that he can present more information about how to help solo households, because it's not just families who need to save money. Trish and Denise cover so much ground here that applies not just to childless people, but to anyone who's creating their online environment and apps, as we discuss digital exclusion. We also natter about bias and exclusion around power of attorney, the cost of living crisis, human rights, and make a call for more support and more awareness. We were talking about rituals, Tricia, so about whether, about daylight saving and whether I'm into sort of like gothic and things like that, which I suppose I probably am. I like my dark evenings. I don't do daylight.
It's nice though, isn't it, to be able to come in and just sort of draw the curtains and put the heating on, and if you can afford it, obviously.
That too.
Light a few candles, LED or natural or whatever, and just push the world out.
I think that perhaps when you're on your own, as I am as well, that the dark evenings, particularly when you get older, have quite an attraction. I don't know. It's like you sort of think, well, it's okay now, to be on your own because I'm shutting the curtains, I'm on my own. Well, it's great. It's all right having dark evenings because it's sort of allowing me now to be on my own, to be okay to be on my own, because I've shut the world out anyway. It's just.
Do you think that's changed since COVID?
Pardon?
Do you think that's changed since COVID? Did you get more used to it with the lockdowns and everything? Because I find it's changed my perception of being alone.
Probably a bit, Denise, yeah. I think it has a big impact, didn't it? It had a big impact, COVID. Yeah. When you were on your own going through COVID, as so many were, but it felt great to begin with, and then it didn't. But yeah, well, you had to adjust. You kind of had to adjust, and maybe we're still living that adjustment.
I found in my instance that I hated it, to be honest with you, because although I like my own space and I like living on my own, I do like getting out and meeting other people, and there's a difference between withdrawing into your own space out of choice and withdrawing into your own space because somebody says you've got to. There's a world of difference. And I found that it's had a lasting impact on me. I felt rather resentful about the whole thing. Well, I do understand the logics of it, keeping people apart to minimise the spread of infections or what have you. I understand that. I just think if it ever happens again, I hope that it's handled a lot better, particularly from the point of view of people who live on their own. Because now I feel a bit sort of, well, I don't want to go out and do stuff that, perhaps I would have done in a voluntary basis before. I'm like, well, there's plenty of couples who thought and families who thought that they had it bad. They can go out and do that now. I'll do I'll have more say over what I do. You wanted to keep me imprisoned in my own house. So if I want to stay in my own house and not go out and do something for the greater good, then don't complain about it.
No, I think that's what we discuss. That's probably part of the discussion, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being without children, being childless, and being on your own, and aging. You do have this thing. It creeps in as well. It's not till afterwards that you think what you just said. Really, you think, oh well, before I was doing stuff, and now I'm not. Am I bothered? No, I'm not really.
Yeah. I think it's had some unexpected consequences.
Yeah.
Besides that, perhaps won't become clear, until we're a bit further down the line as to how it's affected people's behaviour on a kind of population-wide level rather than just individually. That's my theory, anyway.
I think there'll be a lot becoming clear about COVID.
So before we get really into this discussion,
sorry about that.
This is good. But I thought what we probably should do is, Denise and Trish, introduce yourselves so that our listeners can, get a sense of who you are, and then we'll get back into it.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, Trish? Because I think they've known me a little bit anyway.
Okay. Well, I'm Trish Faulks, and I live in Lincolnshire, in the UK, which is a big county, but nobody's ever heard of, on the eastern coast. And I live with my dog Lily, and I run a blog called Just Me and Lily, which is on Twitter and social media and everything. And I started that out of COVID, which we're just having a brief discussion on, and that came out of COVID. I had to do something, and I started a blog, which I'd never done in my entire life. I knew the basics about computer, etc. And in a sense, I still only know the basics about computer, but I've learnt a bit. So as I've gone along on my blog, it's been fantastic to meet so many different people. It's been amazing. I've learnt the Zoom, never knock Zoom. It's just wonderful. It's been marvellous. And met Michael the other day, and Michael very, very kindly wrote a fantastic piece for the blog, and I don't know if he just won't believe it or what, but his piece attracted more viewers than any other piece that I've ever written. I'll tell you that. It really did, from the male perspective, and it was so concise, and we need more of it. There we are. But I'm childless. We couldn't have children. In those years, you weren't given any particular reason as to why. It was unexplained infertility, and we were just left to get on with it, really. We didn't seem to have any. There didn't seem to be any. There was no support offered, and it was embarrassing then. In those years, it was embarrassing to have to admit, particularly for the man, that we were childless and we couldn't have children. But I don't know. Maybe it was you had to launch yourself back into life and work, etc. So it did get pushed to the back of, any sort of narrative. And we almost forgot about it after a while. And it's since I've got older that it's reared its head. And I felt I wanted to do something about it. So Just Me and Lily is the result.
Thanks, Trish. Yeah. So Denise, you have been on the show before, but we've picked up probably new listeners since then. So
yeah, it's been about 3 years ago. It was before the pandemic, I think. Yes. And I must say, Trish, it's lovely to put a face and a voice to the name, because I think I do actually follow you on Twitter. I've certainly seen your account. Yeah, it's brilliant work that you're doing. Yes, it's always an enjoyable read. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, Twitter has been misbehaving a little bit recently, and I don't think I'm getting all the notifications. And I've noticed a lot of people saying this, that they're not getting the notifications from people that they've followed for quite some time. So I'll follow up again when we're finished here. But yeah, I'm Denise Jackson. I live in the borough of Telford and Wrekin, within the larger county of Shropshire, which most of you probably know from Iron Bridge, the World Heritage Site down there and all the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, the bridge and all that lot. That's actually about 8-9 miles away from me. I live in Open Gates, which is was a small town that got incorporated into Telford, and I lived here really up until I was 19. Went down to London, did a languages degree, worked in quite a few different sectors, both using my language and as a secretary and PA and admin, the whole sort of spectrum of that kind of job. And I came back up here in 2006 to look after my dad, who had been widowed 5 years earlier. I'd helped him look after Mum when she had cancer. She passed away 20 years ago this week. And he was okay for the first couple of years, and then his mobility started to go. He was in his 80s and he had various health problems. Excuse me. So I was what they now tend to refer to as a distance carer, or a carer at a distance, for about 3.5 years. And I was doing 300-mile round trip on the train from London up to Open Gates every weekend practically. And that eventually took its toll on me from a health and a financial point of view. And I moved back here in 2006 to look after Dad full time for the last, well, it was the end of 2006, beginning of 2007. I moved gradually over a few weeks, and I looked after him for the last 18 months of his life, which was both a privilege and something, I have to say, looking back now with the benefit of distance, a little bit of a, I won't actually say an ordeal, but it was a challenge, definitely. And I mean, I'm an only child, single, never had children. So I always say when I tweet on a little bit of a lonely branch of the family tree. So that presented lots of issues for me. I often get asked, well, don't you wish you had a brother or sister? And I said, well, yes and no, because I could have had a brother or sister or more than one who were very supportive, or as I've seen in too many families, I could have found the caring responsibility devolving upon me, and had other family members just down the road who weren't interested and wanted me to get on with it. Or I could have had somebody who was out, you know, Michael's way out in Australia, who wanted to help but wasn't in a position to be able to do so on a day-to-day basis, which again would have been interesting, but not of day-to-day help, obviously. So when Dad died, I had the additional challenge of getting back into work, aged nearly 50, into paid work, I should say. And one of the things that happened was that the DWP told me that carers, former carers, didn't have any status. I would be treated as a job seeker as if I'd been off long-term sick for 18 months, which I wasn't happy about, because I hadn't been sick. I'd been working full time, looking after Dad, and actually putting into practice skills that I'd already got and gaining new skills. And I wasn't happy at all. So I joined the local carers forum, which, because the local carers centre here are actually very good, and they'd given me some support when I was looking after Dad. And one of the things that the carers commissioner from the local authority asked me to do was to set up a group to look into the issues faced by carers and former carers around employment and financial security and well-being and stuff like that, which is still actually going. It was part of the local carers partnership board until they unfortunately disbanded last year. So we're still going. We've got a meeting of our group on Thursday, and that was why I came on to the podcast about 2019, I think it was, to talk about the issues facing carers and former carers, specifically as they age, if they haven't got much in the way of family support or a close family network. So that's me. I'm sort of semi-retired at the moment. I was working part-time with the local health watch for about 18 months up to November, and then unfortunately, and this is something none of you will know, I was suddenly diagnosed with blood clots on both lungs. It's completely out of the blue. And it was only discovered because I was due to undergo gallbladder surgery the following week. And I thought I got a chest infection and needed to get it checked out. And NHS 111 sent me down to the local hospital, the Princess Royal, and they were absolutely brilliant. They diagnosed it within about 3 or 4 hours. And I'm now on blood thinners. And much better, but still a bit nervous about what's going to happen when I have the review next month, the 6-month review for it. So I haven't gone back to work as such. I'm lucky I've got a small occupational pension, which will see me through, hopefully, until the state pension, which I will get in September next year. But I think that's definitely an issue that needs discussing, because a lot of people now, both male and female, are finding that their retirement age is getting further and further away, their state retirement pension age, and they possibly can't get into paid employment or the employment they want. And then, just to add insult to injury, we did what we describe as economically inactive. Well, thank you very much. I'm not very happy with that label at all. Anyway, that's me, basically. And that's where I am at the moment.
I noticed that you tweeted. One of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast again, Denise, was because you were on Twitter, and I happened to see via the Full Stops account that you tweeted Martin Lewis. And for the benefit of people who don't know Martin Lewis, who listeners further afield, then he is a self-titled money-saving expert, but actually is very active on UK television. I don't know, Michael, do you know of him in Australia?
No. So I'm actually Googling right now while you're talking.
Okay, yeah. He's quite a force of nature, I think would be fair to say. Does offer lots and lots of advice around money saving. But Denise, you tweeted him because you wanted him to talk about solo households in the advice, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he has, I'm not sure whether it's stopped now. I think it has for the time being, but he has a weekly TV show. Yeah. And I think it's on a Tuesday night. And he's covered every subject under the sun, really. And he does all, what the news is that's come in during the week. If there's anything to do with benefits changes and any of the support for the cost of living stuff and all that. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan of Martin Lewis. I mean, I did quite a lot of work, both paid and volunteer, with Citizens Advice, and he's a huge supporter of Citizens Advice. He's a huge supporter of people who have had mental health issues, because he's made the link that lots of people and organisations don't between financial security and mental health. So I've got a lot of time for Martin Lewis, but like everybody else, he always seems to be banging on about how it's going to affect families and how it's going to affect couples. And there's almost never a mention of a single person and their economic situation, which can often be quite precarious in comparison with a couple when they've got two incomes coming in. So I started that. I haven't had, to be honest, I haven't had much come back, but I had a lot of people like yourself take it up. Although I haven't had anything specifically back from the show or from the producers of the show, but I will keep banging on about that. I just think we need to raise awareness of it.
Can I say?
Oh, of course, do. Yeah, chip in. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Denise. Of course, everything that you say there, and I think there's a point where we sort of. Well, I can't speak for everybody who's childless and aging, but there's almost this point you think, oh, nobody's gonna listen. Just get on with it. Just deal with it. And that's not right, is it? We shouldn't be just getting on with it and dealing with it, because I feel the same. I feel the same. You're thinking, when they're talking about all these extra bonuses or whatever that various people can have, and the single supplements, and particularly since the energy crisis, I have no idea how to access them. And often, I know I'm sort of generalizing here, but often other people on their own have got families to help them and say, right, okay, Mum, this is what you do. This is what you need. I'll do this. I'll phone them for you. And we don't have anybody, and we don't know where to go. And there's almost an embarrassment about admitting the fact that I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Where do I go? Try and phone some helpline, and you're sitting there 20 minutes later still waiting. I think sometimes it's down to baseline again. Who knows about us? Do the NHS really know about us? Are they really aware of us? Is social care really aware of us as a large and growing group of people? Clearly not, but your reaction.
Yes, I can give you a good example of the NHS.
They're not, though, are they? And do we need to be, having more awareness around the NHS, etc.? I've tried knocking. Actually, I sent a letter to our local GP's practice manager's office. I never had a reply. I had a reply from some charity. Literally sent it on to them. I had a reply from a charity that we met, and it became clear that, lovely as she was, it was not going to be of any use to we childless folk. So I'm going to keep on trying, because they do talk about, they just assume it's families. They just assume you've got support, or
Absolutely.
you're in the category. Where do we go for support? Where do we go?
Well, I've just mentioned that I had this diagnosis of the pulmonary embolisms in November. They were absolutely brilliant, the same day emergency centre at the hospital. I won't have a word said against them. But when I saw the doctor to get the prescription for the apixaban and just to kind of discharge me from the clinic, I said to him, well, what do I do next? And I've got to say, this I've joined a Facebook group for people who have the same condition, and there isn't a great deal of follow-up. But I nearly fell out of my chair, because he said, well, I don't want you to do anything too energetic for the next couple of weeks. And, carry on with the blood thinners and all this. And he said, apart from that, he said, just go home and let your husband take care of you.
Insulting.
I sort of went, sorry, I actually live on my own. And to be fair, he did have the grace to look a bit, embarrassed about what he'd said. And he said, yes, he said, sorry about that. He says, yes, actually, I do. And, because of everything that was going on, I wasn't, I'm not that quick-witted at the best of times, I've got to say. I always think of witchy responses half an hour after the fact, But I did wish I'd said to him, oh, can we hook up then? Perhaps you can look after me. I'm sure as a consultant, you've got a better house than I have.
You're a bit of all right.
So did you end up getting his number then?
No, I didn't, Michael.
No.
I didn't react fast enough. I should have thought of that at the time. No. They were brilliant.
He missed out.
But sorry?
He missed out.
He missed out. Yes.
Yeah, so the doctor.
Oh, he missed out. Sorry, there was a bit of a crackling on the line there. Yes, he definitely did. Yeah. I'll tell myself that. But that's an example of how it's assumed. It's the default position that you've got somebody to look after you. And I thought, well, knowing, with my work with unpaid carers, I could have been going home and looking after a husband who was disabled or chronically ill himself. I could have been the carer. But there's no allowing for that sort of possibility.
No, there isn't, because they won't really. Do they want to know? I mean, if they find out, if they find out, oh God, there's another great group of people here that really we ought to be tending to, we're not going to manage. Don't ask.
Yeah.
You do wonder, because they, according to them, they've got enough to do at the moment. So, but that doesn't help us, does it? That's not helping. We're aging. I've got rheumatoid arthritis, and I haven't seen a rheumatologist or spoken to one for nearly 2 years, and I'm supposed to speak to one twice a year. And I just seem to have fallen off their list. I don't know, either that or they've gone, don't bother with her.
I just think it's a general thing, actually, Trish, because I've heard so many people saying that they've, they're supposed to be seen on a regular basis for a review or a check, and they're just not getting it, or it's much further spaced out than it normally would be.
But you can't help it. I sort of go inwards on it and think, see, this is because I'm childless. They don't care. They're not bothered. I've got nobody to speak for me. It's this advocacy thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Who speaks for us? Who speaks for us? And I suppose if we bothered to look, there would be somebody somewhere. And the first point of call would probably be citizens' advice. But I can't.
Yeah, they're very good. I can recommend them from having worked with them and been a client of theirs as well. They helped a lot. They helped my dad and I, which is how I was introduced to them, with an issue that he got around council tax and poor advice that we'd been given by the council, that ended up with Dad owing an amount that he thought he was entitled to because of advice that they'd given him, I should say. About council tax. I think it was called council tax benefit in those days. It then became council tax relief or something else, CTR. But he was given poor advice and then was chased up for an outstanding amount. And we went to Citizens Advice and they were extremely helpful about it. So, Or Age UK, they're the other really good organisation who can often help.
They can. I can't get through to them though. I have quite a muddled brain, I think. I don't know. I'll think of something and think, oh, that's the number. Yes, phone them. I do it in a minute. Then I disappear somewhere else. Something else gets in the way. I go back, forgotten about that. Later, I might go back and phone them. I don't get an answer. I've forgotten again. Nothing works for me. There's nothing there that's working for a muddled brain like mine. And that's kind of why I need somebody to advocate for me, really.
I think it's generally got harder. It's generally got harder since COVID. That they put everything online or on the phone lines, but they seem to have run the phone lines down as well. So I think it's a general frustration, that.
Yes, I suppose so. But it's more of a frustration, and I will immediately go, see, this is what it's like when you're childless. See, I'll bring everything back to that. For me, it's a very narrow world, mine. I mean, it's all about childless. Oh yeah, well, you see, it's all because of that. And it's not always, but I think in my head, well, it's going to have to be, because that's what I want to get out there. That it's about childlessness, in all its many forms.
Yeah.
Because I think we are growing in numbers, and even if we weren't, we're still here as a group. I just feel we need attention. We need attention outside of our own immediate people, outside of our circles where we're all doing grand work. Yeah. They need to know outside of it. Because I've spoken to families who've been very supportive, actually. They've been really supportive and said, I've never thought of it. And you think, how can you not have thought of it? I never thought of it.
That's it. Yeah. Or don't want to think about it, because I think a lot of people, it's a fear factor that's involved there. They're perhaps in a couple or got lots of family around them, and they don't want to think of a situation where they might find themselves without their partner or, without their children close at hand. And it's quite a frightening thought, actually. I mean, if you've been single long term, you get to deal with it. You have to. You don't have any choice. But I think, it annoys me a little bit that it's assumed that I will always cope because I've not got any choice. A couple of things. I've heard it referred to as the curse of the competent. Or the curse of competency, which, I looked after my dad, therefore if I'm ill at all, well, surely Denise is capable of looking after herself. She helped her dad look after her mum. She looked after her dad without a great deal of input for us. So she's got to be competent enough to look after herself. But it's different, isn't it? If you're not well yourself.
It is, and there's a lot of truth in that one. I also think it's because they really don't want to know. I know my cousin in Leicester, and we were never close. We're not close biologically, but occasionally she does phone, and the conversation is all about her family. Okay, naturally, that. I suppose, that is her life. So it's all about her family, who I've never met, and very rarely, if ever, does she say, "And how are you, Trish? How are you getting on?" Because never do they say that.
That's so frustrating.
Well, I think it's because they don't really. Do they want to know? Do they actually want to know? I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, well, sit back. I've got a list. Hang on, I'll just start at the top, shall I?" I'm not going to do that, but I don't think they want to know that they may need to say, "Well, I can help you," because people with the best will in the world, don't always want to actually get involved and help.
No, and I've often thought about that actually, Trish, that, you know, if people, do they not ask because they think I'm going to present them with a whole list of demands, as you said, you know, oh, will you do my shopping, do my laundry for me or whatever, or come and sit with me every night for half an hour. That's not it. It's just knowing that somebody would notice if I went missing for a few days, you know, and that I might be, you know, really ill, or I might have, you know, collapsed or something like that. So, but it's not because I want somebody to take over my life for me.
I mean, that's actually, you know, a conversation in itself, because I go out walking with the dog, and I walk because, you know, you always like, you clear your head when you go on these lonely footpaths. And I'm told I shouldn't, but I like to walk in the woods and the fields and on the, you know, Lincolnshire footpaths. They're lovely. But there's nobody about, and there's no signal on the mobile. So, you know, what am I supposed to do? You know, am I supposed to phone somebody every time I go out and say, right, I'm on my way to Tetford. About half an hour, I'll be across the second field where the cows are next door. All right. If you've not heard from me in an hour, come and knock. Yeah, I can't do that.
And just stage party.
You actually came to mind a couple of weeks ago, Trish. I was thinking of you when I was out with my dog, and I checked in and had that moment of couples privilege, because I went out with my dog. It was quite remote where we were. And it was just us, and I was walking down this lane, and there was this chap there, and I thought,
yeah.
And my dog is very placid, you know, life passes her by in that kind of dog way, and unusually she was a bit at this person, not comfortable around them. I thought, I had no signal, I had nothing, and I turned around, went back. Difference is I had someone waiting for me. Quite whether my husband would have actually noticed how much time had passed, I don't know. That's debatable. Well, that's another conversation. But I had someone there that could probably ultimately would have gone, oh, it's been a couple of hours. That's a privilege of mine. But you came to mind because I follow your work and your walks, and I love the photographs that you have with Lily as well. But I'm also conscious, and I know Lincolnshire, it's not too far from me in Cambridgeshire, and it's quite remote, some parts of that, and you came to mind at that point, and I thought, oh gosh, yes, so this moment of vulnerability you're sharing, I checked in with my privilege, because I did realize that, but and also probably my age as well, but to actually go out and to be alone and to do the walks that you do is inspirational. But that must come with some thought around risk as well. And you're right, how do you tell somebody that you're in a field with some cows somewhere about this geographic location, which could be anywhere?
It could. I could be whisked off. You know, somebody could come across the field and you know, sling a net over me and take me away somewhere.
And I think it's all been in our minds, hasn't it, with various, you know, cases that have happened recently. That lady who unfortunately, you know, drowned when she was walking her dog a few weeks ago, and the ladies who have been attacked. You know, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it is worrying. And of course, it brings about a bigger question as well, that because we are on our own, should we have to give up things that other people might take for granted?
No.
Would it curtail our freedom? I don't think it should, but there's a lot of practical issues around it, aren't there?
There are. I mean, so many times I think that as I'm setting off on lonely footpaths, and I think I'd be more worried about leaving Lily. You know, if I fell over and cracked my head and was unconscious or something, and nobody came along the footpath, and, you know, she's there on her own. So I'd be worrying about her, really, because she wouldn't have a clue. She's as dizzy as a cartload of monkeys. And, you know, so she wouldn't know what to do. She'd be running down. So I'm worrying about the dog. You know, I'm there, flaked out, and I'm somewhere in there. I'm worrying about the dog. Because I'm not, I mean, realistically, as you get older, and I am quite old, you know, you don't get so steady on your feet. You do silly things. You tell yourself you're never going to do that. You're not going to fall over. You're not going to trip, but you do. Your feet just do stuff, that they never did before. They just fall over each other like they've got some hard. You know what? I'm just going to tread on that foot there when you're on the deck. Because it just happens. And that happens when you get old. Nobody tells you about that. So, I am dicing with dangerousness when I embark on my walks, I must admit. I'm being selfish.
What's come to mind for me, I'm going to be practical because that's where my brain goes. But thank you both for sharing this, by the way, too, because I'm one of the things that we did for my mum is that we got her a life alarm. So what it is, it's a little, thing that lanyard that sits around and it detects if you fall over. I'm not suggesting that you should go and get one, but what I'd like to hear your opinions on is that, would that be something that you would consider using if you went out, or would you feel, well, there's a certain stigma that sits around you having to use one and therefore would not use it?
I had one. I did use one. I don't know if it's the same thing.
Okay.
But it's called 24-hour alarm. And I think Age UK do it, don't they, Denise, and various other companies?
Yeah, my dad had one with the local housing association, ran it. But I don't know whether the one my dad had, I don't think would have worked beyond so many yards outside the house.
Yeah, they only work within
the house. Yeah. I don't know whether the one that Michael's got is it something like the sorry, I always tend to bring these things back to the cat collars. I know you can, if you've got a cat that's out.
What it's got is
a collar and then with a radio thing on it.
It's actually got a SIM card in it.
Oh, right.
So it actually works on, I think it actually works on any mobile network because, you're not making phone calls. And so what it does is you program it with 3 phone numbers. And this is where I was going to, in that it's, for my mother, it's got me, my wife, my brother. And then if no one picks up the phone, because you can talk via it, it goes straight to the New South Wales Ambulance Service. So that's the way it works, and it will detect if you fall over and that sort of thing.
But then isn't that assuming that someone can set it up?
Exactly.
Again, if we're talking about digital exclusion,
yes.
It's assuming that the ultimate user has someone, as Tricia said, you need someone to navigate these things for you. Who does that?
But then what numbers would you ladies put in?
Well, this is the thing.
That's what I'm sitting there thinking. Wow.
You have friends, but friends are less. And my friends tend to be younger and they've got families who they're very dedicated to and careers. Because the older people around here, and I'm sure you find the same, Denise, the older people around here, they're all about the grandkids and, they'll go for coffees and so on with you, which I'm into really, and talk about the grandkids. You can't get them off it. It's until the point where I've almost given up really on that one.
It's a shame.
Younger friends have got their families, but they are more inclusive. So I tend to stick with them, but they often live perhaps 20, 30 miles away, which
isn't necessarily helpful if you need somebody to put their head around the door and just say, "Hey, Trish, you okay? Everything all right?" Yeah. That's not going to work, is it, for somebody who lives at that distance?
Things have changed. I mean, in this neighbourhood, communities seem to have changed to what I remember back in my day. And that's an old person speak there, but they have changed where they really did look out for each other and It just doesn't seem to be the same now.
That's right. And what Michael said, I mean, that's fantastic. And I think this whole thing with the tech and the AI and all this sort of thing is going to play a more and more important part in keeping people independent as they grow older. We've got the Independent Living Centre here, which is run by the local authority in Telford and Wrekin, and they've got a lot of these gadgets and stuff, so there is some recognition of that. But I mean, going back to Michael's point about who would you allocate as somebody as your contact or your key holder or what have you, I remember this coming up when my dad was applying for one of these alarms, and that was okay. We got his sister who lived just down the road, and also another neighbour, and I think they were both key holders. But we had reservations about both of those because they were both quite elderly, and my auntie, as it turned out, was having memory problems. It turned out she was in the early stages of dementia, and she outlived my dad, but she was, the illness started to take a hold around the time that he passed away. But I also thought of myself, and I thought, well, hang on a minute. Because I said, well, can't you as the organisation be somebody, do you not send somebody to check? And they said, oh, no, it depends on you having a network of people around you. And I'm thinking, well, the people who most need this service are the ones who aren't going to have a network around it. So it's a bit of an own goal, really, or counterproductive, whatever you want to say. Now, I don't know whether that's changed recently, but one of the things that I noted down here, it's a whole different subject, but it falls into the same sort of problematic area, is things like power of attorney. Yeah. I mean, people keep saying to me, oh, I've given my sister or my husband or my son or daughter power of attorney. Have you got yours set up? And I'm like, no, because I haven't got anybody who I would lumber with power of attorney. Now, I've since found out that you can actually have that lodged with a solicitor. So I will no doubt be going down that route. But where is the information about that, Trish? Have you ever seen any information about power of attorney that's been really easily findable? Because, and I'm sorry that's on a different topic, but it does fall within the same sort of problematic area.
I think Age UK have a lot of info on that, but you'd have to, it's difficult for every big charity, etc., to put everything out there, but I'm pretty sure Age UK have quite a bit to say on that. If you want to sort of, I suppose you'd have to go onto Google somewhere and there'll be some lawyers writing about it. The only thing I do is, because I've got the same problem, and at the moment my power of attorney is lodged with my lawyer. But lawyers, with the best one in the world, I'm thinking, well, I'll be dead. Will I care? Will I be bothered? Probably, I'll be dead. They take a big chunk.
They're in it for the money, aren't they? Obviously, yeah. But then again, even if you've got friends who are willing to do it, you've got to be able to trust them to have your best interest at mind, because it's like having somebody come and check that you're okay if you've suddenly gone AWOL for a few days, or if you pressed your pendant alarm or what have you. You've got to be able to trust the people who are coming to your rescue. And the same with, perhaps to an even greater extent, with power of attorney. If you're going to give somebody power over your money if you're incapacitated, or power over what happens to you health-wise, and it could be something as drastic as turning off life support, couldn't it? And I mean, that works both ways, because not only is that obviously of interest to the patient, but it's also a huge responsibility to put on somebody who is not a close relative. It's a world of difference putting that on a partner or a child, an adult child, than it is on a friend. It's very difficult.
It is, and everywhere relies so heavily on volunteers who are marvellous. Volunteers do a fantastic job. I've been a volunteer myself, and I'm sure you have, probably still are.
Yes.
I don't think I am at the moment. If I am, it'll be some horse charity or something to do with dogs or horses. But volunteers do an amazing job, but they're not solicitors, are they? They're not lawyers, and
No.
they so much. And
they each bring something to it. The volunteers bring the passion and the goodwill and the sort of altruism to it, whereas the lawyers bring the professionalism, but also the financial demands. And they're approaching it from a different angle, aren't they?
I can't help but feel sometimes we're shoved under the carpet. Give them that. Age UK will do it. But I just feel that we're a group that's on the edge. We're sort of teetering on the edge of proper full, awareness and acknowledgement by the great general public. But we can't quite, it's almost as if something's stopping us, because if we get out there as a proper group, I mean, it's quite a thing, isn't it? We're stating quite a lot of facts here that do need dealing with, because really they're dealing with it. Well, you can go to Age UK, where you can go there, You have to know that you can go to Age UK.
Yes.
You have to be able to get hold of Age UK, which is not always easy, and so on and so on. You've got to have a certain level of intellect and intelligence to be able to do all these things.
And as you say, it depends on there being an awareness of it in general, because I always say that any service or organisation is only as good as the awareness of it, because if there could be a really brilliant service out there, but if you don't know about it, you can't access it, and it's no use to you. So there's kind of a responsibility on us to look for stuff, but also on the various agencies and organisations to promote services that they offer. Otherwise, people aren't going to be able to use them.
No, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because I feel as if we're shuffling forward as a group. We're sort of shuffling forward and getting there, and everybody's working so hard to get awareness and acknowledgement of, being without children, being childless, etc. And as I was saying earlier on my bit, there are different pieces of childlessness. There's childlessness when you get older. There's childlessness when you've just found out you're going to be childless, and all the bits in between. And each one needs a different piece of caring, almost.
Yeah, and then there's people like me who kind of vaguely assumed I'd have children, but it just, just never happened. So it's, as you say, there's a whole spectrum, aren't there?
But we're all there, meeting together as childless and needing, some sort of awareness. I mean, a lot of people are too embarrassed, aren't they, to say that they're childless. They seem ashamed to say it. I don't know why, but
yeah, that seems to be a general theme that I've come across. I mean, while I can't ever say that it's affected me personally, I mean, I'm okay with people saying, "Have you got children?" I'll say, "No, I haven't actually." And or sometimes now at my age, it's, "Have you got grandchildren?" And I'll sort of say, "No, I haven't." And they'll say, "Have you got children?" And no, I haven't. And I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is people kind of probing and saying, "Oh, you've never been married, you've never had a partner, never wanted children." I'm like, what business is this of yours, really? That's my business, not yours. Not yours personally, but in general, if somebody just asks out of the blue, yeah.
Well, they do though. But I reminded me how you were talking, Denise. I was watching a programme last night, because what else does one do on a Saturday night? I think back to my Saturday nights, and I think, look at me now. Look. I'd have been completely blotto by now back in the day. It was a comedian, Rob Beckett. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, I know.
And it was a very good show. It'd been televised, and he was going amongst the audience, and I don't know, it was because he'd got a family. He was bemoaning, as comedians do, moaning about his family. Going amongst the audience and saying, "Have you got kids?" Yeah. Then he'd come to this late middle-aged couple on the end, whatever they were, Arthur and Joan, we'll say. "You got kids, Joan?" No, you got no kids. And I thought, what's he going to say now? Because this is clearly not rehearsed. And he said, "Well, I think Arthur and Joan are the sensible ones. The rest of us are all working hard and acting stupid. And Arthur and Joan have got a life in front of them," or something. I suppose he didn't know what else to say, but worse.
Yeah,
quite a reasonable response, because a comedian, nowadays, Jimmy Carr, God knows what he would have said, but it was quite a measured response, and I'd not heard that before, not seen that happen. In front of your eyes, somebody said, "No, we don't have any children." And
comedy shows are really difficult, aren't they? We know we've got the No Mo Book Club, but I always find I don't go to comedy shows anymore because I find I'm just going to sit there and start heckling badly, and I find them incredibly exclusionary. And there's no way to test it, is there? Because what you think might be a good comedian, suddenly they start fodder. Families are really good fodder for comedians.
That's often one of the main sort of sources of material, isn't it? Really, yeah.
We've got a really good lady here in Australia called Kitty Flanagan. So if you ever Googling or YouTubing someone, Kitty Flanagan, she is a single childless woman, and she uses that in her comedy quite a bit. Obviously, quite ironic, but
we do have a couple of female comedians who are openly childless, and they didn't want. Well, Sarah Milligan, she's never said if she wanted them or didn't.
Yeah.
And there's another one, of course, whose name I've now forgotten, but she talks quite openly about being childless and so on, which is good. They are speaking about it and being quite aggressive on the subject that they've been asked, and why would you ask me just because I'm a woman, etc. So I suppose it's one way of getting the subject out there, but don't quite get the
no.
Does it? It's not necessarily the way forward that we all go and be comedians and stand on stage.
I couldn't do that. I'm hoping for telling jokes. I always forget the punchline.
I was going to say, ladies, I've been very quiet this episode listening to you because it's quite sobering, isn't it? What you're sort of talking about. Where do I go? What do I do? Who do I ask? Where do I get the help from? It's been a real sobering listen, and I think it's kind of we were talking before, Trish, weren't we, before the episode, about how actually it's quite a difficult topic, I think, for anyone that's childless, because you said it, Denise, you're that lonely branch on the family tree, aren't you? Who do I go to? If you haven't got children, then who do you rely on when the shit hits the fan or something something unexpected happens? And I think even when we're coupled, I think there is the number of people I speak to, that fear is still very real in terms of what happens if it's me facing into this on my own as I get older. And I'll be honest with you, tech is not my strength now. I dread to think what it's going to be like in 20 years' time.
Yeah. And I think this came up such a lot during the pandemic, when people were forced to rely on Zoom and Teams and what have you. And I remember saying to somebody sort of half jokingly that I think it might have been the Local Age UK, because they've had quite a programme about digitalisation and identifying gaps where people haven't got access to digital resources and trying to run community classes and what have you, which was difficult during the pandemic because you had to get people on in the first place to be able to have the lessons, or you had to have them, people phoning them up, which didn't work terribly well because everybody's got a different device and it's not the same as being able to see what, being next to them and saying, well, you press that key or whatever. Oh, no, you don't do that on a Chromebook. That's on a Mac, or that's on a laptop or whatever. But I remember saying, those of us who were stuck at home here, we really need access to a kind of general IT department, because if you're in an organisation or in a company, you will have an IT department or a company, that's contracted to provide IT support. And yet, if you're at home, say, because I was doing quite a lot of volunteer work as opposed to paid work during the pandemic, trying to support other unpaid carers and former carers, if anything went wrong with my IT, I was up a creek without a paddle, as they say. It was.
Yeah.
It was very, very frustrating. But it comes back to another point I was just going to make, actually, that one of the things I found, particularly in recent years, is that one-to-one help is very good, and word of mouth. If you can be part of a group, be part of a network, like here we've got the what used to be the Senior Citizens Forum, which is now called Forum 50 Plus, because there was always some vague, parameters about what age you started to become a senior citizen. So they decided to change the name to Forum 50 Plus, so that it's everybody from 50. We even got one or two people coming up to 50 who they've said, yeah, you can be an honorary member because you're going to be getting there within 18 months or what have you. And they've set up, they did a phone check-in scheme that they took over from the local council during the lockdowns. And then they made a really big effort to get people out and about and meeting up face to face, as well as continuing with some of the virtual and the phone stuff for people who are more housebound. And I go to a regular one on a Wednesday afternoon, just down to the local community centre, 10 minutes walk from me here. And the number of things, like, for example, I, as a lot of people did, I acquired an air fryer and hadn't the foggiest idea how to use it. How do you convert the cooking times over from a cooker or microwave or whatever to an air fryer? And I struck up a conversation with somebody who was a few months ahead of me, had got one like I had, didn't know how to use it, but had found out by trial and error. And that's been really, really helpful. I mean, that's just one sort of fairly trivial example, but I think quite often a lot of the knowledge I've had, and certainly with this pulmonary embolisms, it's been from a Facebook group who somebody's always coming on saying, oh, I was diagnosed last week, haven't been given much help or support. Anybody been through the same thing? And of course about 20 people rush on at once and almost crash the site because they all want to share their experiences. So I think, unfortunately, we've got to be a bit proactive here, and it's nice to think that it would all come to us, but I think we've got to go out and almost build these networks and find support where it's not otherwise forthcoming, whereas it might be. And we've also got to recognise that not everybody with children has a brilliant experience.
No, of course
it's like, yeah, it's like I was saying about having, other family members when I was looking after Dad. With a lot of people, the children could have emigrated, could have got married, moved to the other end of the country, be looking after, say if it's your son, maybe looking after the mother-in-law, can't necessarily come back to you.
Do you feel that, I don't know, probably alone on this one, but I'd actually like to see more integration sometimes with childless and families. And I think there is quite a keenness on their side as well, to understand if it's just mums coming along perhaps, or just parents or father. I think there is, a certain element of want to, be involved rather than just us. I don't know if it's just me that feels that's, that could work.
I'm sure there's a lot of goodwill out there, and it again comes back to it's the 3 R's, isn't it? Recognition, and recognition, that people recognise that there is a need out there, and that they're then given the opportunity to meet that need, or to offer to meet that need. If you don't know somebody has a specific requirement, you're either not going to worry about it, and certainly not going to make any attempts to address it. If that makes any sense, because you don't know about it, and the number of times I've had a conversation with people and they've said, well, why didn't you let me know, and I would have come and helped you with that, or I'd have given you a lift to that hospital appointment or something.
They do say that, don't they? And they mean it, but you don't like to ask.
No. No, that's a big barrier.
Yeah.
No, I think it's. Oh, sorry, Trish, you go ahead.
Well, I was only just going to say on what Denise was saying about learning digital. Yes, I've actually got to employ a company to come and help with it. Mine's quite serious on this MacBook. Things are happening that shouldn't be happening on it. I think there's a little person living in there that's doing things. That's what I think. And but one thing that you run about, learning about that. I want to learn about how to use this damn camera, because I am hopeless with the camera. I have no idea. And can I find anywhere around here to just, because if you ask somebody, they start talking to you in jargon. I don't understand the jargon. Don't talk to me in jargon. I don't understand it. So there's all these things old people have. And when you're on your own, because you haven't got the family there, or some son or nephew or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's something we've heard a lot around here, which is why Age UK have had this big push to get people, brought into the digital community, as it were, and they run drop-ins at community centres and at sheltered housing complexes and things. And I don't know whether you've got anything.
We have got that. We have that here, which is excellent, and I think people do attend. You wish that more people. I don't think it's as well attended as they'd like.
No,
you think why not? Because it really should be, but perhaps it will build up. Age UK, so around here, they're not very good at promoting themselves. They're just quite poor at PR. They think if they put a little notice in the local library, everybody will know about it. And they won't. They need to get. But,
it comes back again to promoting the services, doesn't it? Because people can't use them if they don't know that that they're there, and that's a shame, because then that's frustrating for them, because they've got volunteers trained up to lead sessions, and they don't get the number of people coming in that they're looking for. But apart from I don't really know what you do there, because sometimes they get grants, don't they, from local authorities and what have you.
A lot of grants and funding.
Yeah, and they should make it. I think the local authorities should make it kind of. Well, they should do a lot of promotion themselves as the people who are supplying the grant, but they should also make it conditional upon the organisation that they do a certain amount of promotion, so that they're actually getting to the people who need it.
Well, I keep on telling a lot of charities, local charities, use local radio, send a press release. Yeah. It won't cost you anything. Do you not understand? Just send a press release to the local paper. They'll use it. They won't use it. It won't cost you anything. They probably won't.
Even podcast, I think that's the thing. It's kind of, I sort of think sometimes that there's this kind of divide, and it almost happens in sort of different ways, doesn't it? That you have younger people assuming. My gut feeling, and I couldn't prove it, but I think there's a lot of younger people who might just say, okay, well, there's a cut-off point here, because I think that the data, I remember it, is that if you were born before 1980 or 1985, I think it is, then you've had to learn how to use digital tech. If you're born after that date, then you're native to it. You're born into it.
Grown up with it, yeah.
Yeah. So kind of whether there's I think there's some kind of maybe exclusion goes around that if you are after that point or before that point, then you don't need to know these things, but actually you do, because let's be honest, I mean, Trish started a blog. It's fantastic. It's amazing you've done that, and that's important to you. Your presence on the internet is as valuable as anyone else who's younger, because it's doing a service and it's providing information. And again, your blog is a great place for people to promote events and help and support. Use what you do. It's a great example of that. And it is just so exclusionary, isn't it? We think about even going to a car park and parking your car. Use a mobile, put you in all your details.
Oh yeah.
Do I consider myself to be relatively tech savvy, because it's a large part of what I do as a business. But I stood there at a car park thinking, I have absolutely, oh my God, what the hell's my registration number to start with? What button do I press? And oh God, I've got to download an app. And I have no signal on my phone to download the app.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
And then trying to use it.
Oh,
And that's something that's actually a legal thing. My mum ended up with £100 fine because she didn't know how to press the enter button on the machine. She just simply didn't know. But luckily could argue the point for her, but I do that and advocate for her.
Comes back to advocacy, doesn't it? Really,
no one's going to advocate for me when I get older, and
same here.
How do I know this stuff?
Well, I you tend to rely, as I have done in car parks, myself. Somebody, usually a chap, stood at the back of me. Hey, Army Duck, I'll do that for you. You stand over there, I'll sort it. And that's what I rely on, because, you play the little old card at that point, and, somebody hopefully will come along, and because they want to pay and you're in the way, basically. So, they will help you.
Which is a shame, because you're not learning, because they're not telling you, they're doing.
I'm standing their ages, Berenice, going, I can't remember the car registration number now. Oh, that's completely gone. I'll have to go back to the car now and have a look.
And it's
really
feeling, isn't it? It's digital exclusion, but it has a bigger effect because it's frustrating, and also, you want to know how to use this. But like you say, who teaches you this? And it comes a point where the world overtakes people,
and it's changing so quickly. I mean, that's a good point that you made about people growing up with the technology after a certain cut-off point. But I mean, I grew up without that sort of technology, obviously, because it wasn't around there. But when I hit my 20s, we were starting to have word processing and word perfect and all that sort of thing. I remember having to use, and the different systems. And then, say what you like about Bill Gates, he did bring it all together onto Windows, really. So it became a little bit easier. But I mean, things change so quickly. I mean, I get so annoyed sometimes when I go into, my email accounts or into Zoom or what have you, and all of a sudden the format's changed and the look of the screen has changed, and they never give you any warning about it. They just do it. And there was one of them, I can't remember which it was, but I mean, they had such an outcry about the change of it that they actually changed back. I can't remember what it was now. It was something with Windows, I think. But a lot of people moaned about it, and eventually they dropped it as an experiment and went back to the old way of doing it. So there was kind of people power there. But you really have got to be able to keep up with the changes, which I thought gets harder as you get older.
It does get harder. But I think one kind of good thing out of it is that it makes us use our brains. It makes us work at it, because nobody's there to tell us. And you see the people who have got their relatives telling them how to do it, and they're not as clever as we are, Denise, frankly.
Because we have to rely on ourselves, whereas they know they can always ring up the person who, can you come and help? I'm stuck with this, or, what does this message mean, or whatever. We've got to work it out ourselves.
We have to. Yeah, we have to. And so
it's a really good point. And actually, it's a lesson to people that create this stuff. I mean, I work with people a lot of the time and do myself with web design. It's kind of a big part of what I do. And there's this whole thing about accessibility, and it's shocking how little accessibility there is, and how very few people who develop this stuff understand, because they know how to do it. It doesn't mean everybody else does. And the single most important person in anything that anyone develops is the person who uses it, not the person who did it.
The end user. I find the British Gas with them, I find their website quite hard to navigate, and they did send me a survey the other day, and I gave them quite a low rating for it. And I said it's really, really hard to navigate this, because it's kind of there's no obvious route through it, whereas in a lot of websites it's pretty obvious, that you click on this icon, click on that. But with this, it's one of those where it has lots of drop downs, and they disappear if you don't go across the screen in quite the right order, and
It's
really not
difficult,
very
isn't
good
it?
at all. Yeah.
So difficult. I always go on a hotel shower theory. That's my basis for things. If I go into a hotel shower and I'm at risk of scalding myself, then it's a really badly designed shower. It's not me. There's just no instructions. I don't know what I'm
Design,
doing.
these
I'm like, where the
instructions,
hell is the icon to tell me where's the thing? I don't know how to get hot water, or worse, I don't know how to get cold water. Am I going to scald myself? And that's really bad. So yeah, hotel shower theory, if it's that bad.
I'll remember that one.
Yeah, really bad design. Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. I'm taking you away from the subjects. What is there that people can do? So I'm thinking about people across our audience who are of different ages, who are childless, but also we have quite a number of people who listen who actually are parents as well. And I'm kind of wondering if there's kind of a message that you can give to them as to what can people do who are listening to this, who don't perhaps identify yet maybe as aging or in a solo household, but kind of need to just maybe enable and help more and be aware. What would you say? What can they do to support you better?
Well, I think obviously, we promote our sites, we promote the Full Stop podcast. Just me and Lily, AWOC, Aging Without Children, etc. And Denise, I don't know if you have a site, but I know you.
No, not personally. No, I mean I tend to retweet stuff a lot from the Aging Without Children and from the Full Stop and what have you. But I'm not I'm not running anything myself at the moment. No, I've got Twitter and Facebook and very happy to promote anything.
Yeah, I think that starting there, that we have, various sites to begin with. When we talk about them, can they make themselves aware? Can they not just flick through? Can they actually read the contents a little bit? Because so that when I turn up and go, oh, I don't have any children, oh, I never thought of that. They could be, they could have some knowledge of it. Go away, read about childlessness, read about being alone, aging without children for whatever reason, and then come back. Then come back and talk to us. Families or otherwise. That's what I'd like to say. Sort of vague, putting it out there, but I would like to see them learning more about the subject. And then we can go on to the next level. Right, do we all get together and promote it to the next level? Then what do we do now? Because that's what I'd like to do, is to talk to, like you just said, Berenice, there are people here who aren't childless, but who have an interest and who are listening. We need to reach them as well, I think. Otherwise, we are kind of talking to the converted, which we need, but I can't help but feel we need to step outside the circle a wee bit and talk to families and the people who have an interest, because they do, and they could help us a lot.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Trisha's just said. I'd also say a couple of other things, really. One is that when it comes to more sort of commercial enterprises, such as going back to the financial thing about the cost of living crisis and everything, I think there's an economic strand to this, that the supermarkets who tend to package everything, larger stuff for families and everything, there's a big customer base out there of single people, childless people, solo households for whatever reason. I mean, they don't seem to have tapped into that too much, really. I get fed up of having to buy stuff in bulk, and I get fed up of being told to batch cook everything. I don't necessarily want to do that. I just wish there was a way of being able to, I suppose I'm lucky I've got a little market down the road here and another bigger one over in Wellington, that you can go and you've still got the fruit and vegetable stalls and you can buy the amounts you want. But the supermarkets aren't always geared up for that, and not everybody's got access to different options, different sort of retail options. So I think think there's that. I think just general recognition, really, that there's not one way of living. There's not one, two parents, 2.5 children, or whatever it is. That's one family format, but there's plenty of others, including people who are widowed, separated, always single, estranged from partners and everything. That these people are all valid in their own right, all count, all contribute in different ways, and just to recognise us a bit more. And I think that comes back to my plea to Martin Lewis and everything. I can't understand why such a large group and growing group is being ignored, both the ageing demographic and the trend towards more people living on their own, yes, which both exist separately and overlapping.
There is the child free as well, of course, who still are on their own. They still are proper aging without children.
Yeah. They will pick up a lot from this that's really useful. I know Ali Hall, who runs Child Free by Choice, is very much keen on what we do from the childless side, and will pick up a lot from what you've been talking about, because the same issue apply to her as well. It's really important. I think I was reading something the other day from the Age Alliance, the Age Action Alliance.org website, which is written by Robin Hadley, of course, Dr. Robin Hadley, who many of us all know and has been on the podcast. And he says on there, and I know AWOC have the same numbers too, is that in the UK, the number of people aging without children aged over 65 years is projected to rise to above 2 million by 2030.
Wow. I hadn't realised it was quite that many, but that's not an insignificant number.
It's massive. It's huge. The article's actually, I'll link it to the show notes, because it's a really good read, written by Robin, of course, sensitively as well as he does. But when we think it's 1 in 4 men, as he estimates, and 1 in 5 women, then that's a lot. If we then add child free, and I don't know whether those numbers include child free or whether it's just childless, or generally everyone that falls into that category.
Really define it.
That is a huge amount that people are missing out on as a demographic. And when you think about 2030, age 65, my maths is shocking. I'm not good at this, but you've got people now, and I would probably say I will fall probably into that category, because my husband's older than I am, so it's something I'm sort of conscious of and thinking, well, a lot of the stuff you're talking about is relevant to me for then, if not for now. Then it's shocking as well. Some of the stuff you're talking about, like power of attorney, are things that are on my mind. Who is sort of power of attorney? So
and I mean, what's going to happen to the NHS if they suddenly have all these people who, when they get older, are more tend to have more illnesses, more hospital admissions, and therefore going to be, I hate to use the phrase sort of, but what they call bed blocking, because they've got nowhere to go out to in the community because there's a shortage of care homes. And I was going to ask, actually, Michael, is this an issue in Australia?
I'm glad you swapped over to me, because I was going to say, look, really thank you both for doing this. I've been quite quiet because my wife and I right now are caring for both my mother and my dad, who's now in a home. And so one of the things that I digress. I'll answer your question, Denise. One of the things that's really hitting me right now is that we're physically doing this with my parents. I'm listening to you guys, and it is a big, and I'm not going to mince words. It's a big fear for us, and I'm lucky that I'm in a couple. I recognise I have privilege there, So I can't imagine what. I'm in awe of you too, like just getting on with it. But digress. So I've been a bit triggered. I think that's the best way of explaining. I've been a bit triggered with this show, but it's in a good way. To you, Denise, yes. One of the things that has become quite obvious to me and Vicky in this time is that so the social services that the government provides are a backup to families providing care for people. I'm living that. I can see that right now. And so, the big thing here is that the government are not switched on to the fact that there is this huge demographic that will be a massive burden on the public purse, and there's no resources or no research going towards that.
Yeah.
And we have a shortage. We do have shortages of care homes, and then of course, depending, and then the quality care home you get depends on what sort of wealth you have as well. We have a very, very stark contrast between the care home that my dad's in compared to the care home that Vicky's grandmother is in. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so, we have similar issues over here. But I really want to thank you two for this conversation.
Thank you so very much. This has been absolutely enlightening, and I'm quite sure we're going to get feedback from this. We always do with our episodes, which we'll be happy to pass on if people have got comments or they want to offer any support to Denise and to Trish. And you can contact us at the podcast, and we could pass anything on. Thank you. I feel informed. Concerned, but also I think there's some degree of empowerment here too, and we're certainly going to think about what we can do to provide better support as well, because it matters. As a podcast, we have a responsibility to do the same, which is really why we wanted you here, to also create some activism, I think, to help you both. So thank you very much today.
Thank you very much.
And I've really enjoyed being with two feisty ladies. It's been great.
I hope you stay in touch with each other, because we love it when podcast guests become mates. That's always so great too. So do stay in touch with each other.
Definitely. Well, I'll make sure that I'm still following you, and keep an eye out for alerts from your blog.
Yes, do. And send me an email sometime. I think the email's on.
Yes.
I can share your emails if you're happy for me to do that.
I'd be happy to, yes. Yeah, no problem whatsoever. Yeah.
Full stop. Networking all over.
Yes, doing a great job as usual. Well, thank you for inviting me. And I'm sorry, Michael, I'm sorry if I've sort of sounded terribly negative, but I'm very aware of how frightening it is sometimes to think about the future, and we all have to stay positive. And I think the best way for us to stay positive is to help each other.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you found Patricia and Denise as inspiring as we did. We'd love to hear from you on your thoughts of the issues that were raised in this episode. If you want to find out more about their work, please look in our show notes, where you can also find details of the transcript and how to donate to us via a virtual coffee at Ko-fi. If you'd like to find out more about The Full Stop, our podcast, or there's a topic that we haven't covered, then please reach out to us, as we like to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. Our website is www.thefullstoppod.com, where you can find links to our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can also join our listeners list, which receive a monthly newsletter that includes advice on mental health and our reflections, as well as news from the wider Childless community. As ever, it's really important to let you know that you're not alone.
Yeah,
because we've got a great deal of wisdom to share between us, I think, and that's one thing. With age does come wisdom. There's a lot of pains and things, but and regrets, but there comes wisdom.
You speak for yourself, Denise. I'm not
okay. I'm sure I speak for you too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Take care.
Love to meet you.
Bye.
Bye now.